Well, good morning. Today we're going to wrap up and conclude our series going through the Sermon on the Mount. So as Jesse said, we're going to be in chapter 7, starting in verse 21 today. This series has been challenging for me. I don't know about you. I hope it's been challenging for you as well. I hope it has challenged you as you think through your life, how you live, how you operate, what your life looks like, what the kingdom life looks like. I hope this has been something that's kind of pressed into each of us a little bit. And I have to tell you that, a couple of the different sermons in this series were hard for me. They weren't comfortable, they weren't fun, but they were important. But today, I feel like is maybe the most weighty of them all. I feel like this is maybe the one that is the most important of them all. Jesus is closing out his sermon here. And, we've gone through this over a few months. Remember, he did this over a day or two, okay? Jesus could have ended his sermon like on a flowery note. He could have been like real fluffy with it, He could have just sort of quietly, okay, now I'm done. And this picture we have of Jesus of the, oh, happy joy, it's done. But that's not at all how he ends, actually. He ends his sermon very pointed, very stern, in a very kind of, I'd say ominous, but he doesn't mince words. And he shows us where we're at, each one of us, the decisions we have to make, and the severity of them. The weight of what it is, this kind of crossroad where we're at as we finish with the sermon and where we kind of live our lives at this crossroad, at this place. And so as we come to this, just know that this isn't going to be one where you're probably going to walk out and say, man, Pastor, I was just warmed and filled. It's probably not today, by the way, which is okay. Last week, Colby was here. I hope you got a chance to hear him speak, whether you were here or saw it later online. It was such a joy to have him here. I very much enjoyed it, really getting to know him more. I had met him before, but hadn't got to know him that much. And he, as our new DS, it was good to really spend some time with him. So I enjoyed him being here. But he taught through verses 15 through 20 on false teachers. And he pointed out that these false teachers were teachers who deceive. They were deceptive people. They are people who teach half-truths or non-truths in such a way that they deceive those who are hearing their words, right? Remember, the passage talks about wolves dressed in sheep's clothing. Yes, that's the way it is, right? Where they come and they actually devour some out of those around them through their false teaching, because it's about them as the false teacher, not about truth, not about what is sweet and reproductive in God's kingdom. And so he taught on that passage. Today's passage is very much connected. I hope by the end you're going to see the connection all the way back to verse 7, all the way to the end. This is sort of his conclusion, 7 to the end, and how all of these work together. And you're going to hear how today is almost a sequel of last week. How today we'll see how this falls and follows right behind what Colby taught last week. So if you join me, we're going to start in verse 21. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter into the kingdom of heaven. Now, I'm not even going to finish the sentence, because that should make us stop. That might be one of the scariest verses we could read. I want you to picture this scene. Here he's just starting his ministry. He's been teaching in these towns and these different places, and here a crowd has followed him. A crowd has come out of the town with him, wanting to hear him teach. And now he has spent all this time teaching. He's gone all the way through everything we've gone through the last few months. He's taught and taught and taught. And all these things that are hard teachings. They're hard for us. They're hard for the people that are hearing him in that moment. And they're asking the question we've been asking, is he serious? And all these people have been following him in such a way that they're intrigued, they're excited. They're like, yeah, I kind of like this guy. And you can see them now at this intersection of where he's gotten to the end of what he has to say, and he's really challenged them in how they're living. And there may be some of them that up to this point and even now are tempted to say, yeah, I'll follow him. Yeah, I'll follow him. Yeah, I like Jesus. He's my guy. He's my rabbi. I come to him and they say, Lord, Lord. And he's saying, not everyone who says this will enter my kingdom. And in the same way, you and I, we can profess with our lips that Jesus is Lord and not be in his kingdom. We can spend our lives doing Jesus things and saying Jesus things and not be in his kingdom. That's concerning, isn't it? See, this passage is not about deceiving others. It's about the fact that we may have deceived ourselves. It's the fact that we may have said things like, I'm following Jesus, I'm with that guy, he's my God, he's my rabbi, he's whatever. And yet it's not true. But we think it's true. We've deceived ourselves. Some may be deceived because they've been misled by one of these false teachers that we just talked about in the paragraph before. That may be true. Because there are those, if you get a really good false teacher who's really convincing and who can take half-truths and non-truths and twist them and make them sound really good, they can lead us astray, right? But there are many who will have spent a lifetime proverbially saying, Lord, Lord, and aren't in the kingdom because they've deceived themselves. And when we finish the sentence, we get a glimpse into why or how. So it says, not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter into the kingdom of heaven. Only the one who does the will of my Father in heaven. See, Jesus is making a clear connection between what we say and what we do, our actions, our lifestyles, how we conduct ourselves. He's making this clear connection that it isn't just what we say, it's what we do. And let's be clear. Our actions aren't what get us into heaven. But our faith should always result in actions. And so our actions, our lifestyles, how we conduct ourselves is evidence of where our faith actually is. And so we can say, Lord, Lord, but if our actions don't reflect that same posture, there's a disconnect. And so it's not just what we say, but it's what we do as well. See, he's asking us to assess not just our teachers, not just those around us who may be falsely leading us, but to assess ourselves too. To assess ourselves, to say, am I living how I'm speaking? The thing I'm proclaiming, the thing I'm claiming, the words I'm saying of I'm with Jesus, I'm following Jesus, I believe in Jesus, whatever, does my life back it up? Does my life align with it? Now, he keeps going. He says, on that day, many who say to me, and by the way, that day, the assumption here is when we stand before him at the end of our lives. On that day, many will say to me, Lord, Lord, didn't we prophesy in your name? Didn't we cast out demons in your name? Didn't we do powerful deeds? See, these people would come before him, and when he's like, you're not in my kingdom, they'd be like, but wait a second. Remember, God, I did this. I remember when I did that thing. I participated in that thing over there. I helped to these people. Remember when I did that? And if you look at these three examples he gives, like these are significant examples. We prophesied in your name, like we were speaking truth in your name. And we were casting out demons. Anybody done that? That's pretty significant, right? Like that's huge. Or done miracles, done powerful deeds. Like these are not small things. Hey, God, remember when I did that? Remember when? Like I did this and that and the other, and I served in this way. Remember that. And then I'll declare to them that I never knew you. Go away from me, you lawbreakers. This is hard for us to hear, isn't it? This isn't comfortable. Because we all assume the best of where we're at. But see, he's making a very clear connection here. You notice right here in verse 23, I never knew you. I never knew you. This idea of knowing God and God knowing us is far more intimate than just knowing. He isn't saying, hey, you didn't go to enough Bible studies and fill in enough blanks. That's not what he's saying. It's an intimate knowledge. I didn't know you. We didn't know each other. You did all these things, and you were pointing to me while you were doing them, but we didn't know each other. He's connecting our knowing of him, our relationship with him, our intimacy with him, with our lifestyles, with how we live, with what we do, how we conduct ourselves. It is very possible for us to not know God, but to say, Lord, Lord, and to do good things, and to point to him while we're doing it, and for him to say, I'm sorry, you missed it. See, he wants to know us. Remember back, verse 7, the Father's invitation. As he's preached all the way through the kingdom, he got to chapter 7, verse 7, and it was his invitation for us to know him. For us to come and know him and allow him to transform who we are. So that then our life, what we do is, back to verse 21, his will, not our will. It's him through us, not us doing things, sprinkling some Jesus on top and calling it good enough. See, as I said, no one enters the kingdom because of our obedience. But when we know him, when we understand that he has saved us by grace, by his free gift, that he has extended the gift of salvation to us, and we accept that, when we understand that, when it truly transforms our hearts, our lives will change, and we will follow him. We will not just do good things, we will be following him as he directs us, as he leads us, so that our things we do are his will. We're not just to beware of the false teachers, but of ourselves and our own false faith, perhaps. So this takes us to the heart of some questions that we have to ask ourselves. And we have to really ask ourselves, because we can deceive ourselves. That's what the whole paragraph's about. Do you know God? Do you commune with God? Do you spend time with him? Not do you know more about him? Do you know him? What does your habits of life, your rhythms of life look like so you can go meet with him? You can spend time with him. You can get to know him. Has he Has he changed you? Do you feel like as you live your life, as you go about the various things that are placed before you, are you following him? Are you doing his will, that he is directing the plan and you're following along with him? Or are you leading the train? And I'm doing what I want to do. And I just assume you're on board. Because after all, I've said, Lord, Lord, right? See, far too often, we make up the rules to the game. We pretend that we get to make up the rules. And we pretend that if we just say, Lord, Lord, then we can do whatever we want. And God will bless it. And even if that includes not doing what he's told us to, we pretend that it's okay. Because after all, there's grace, right? Or the other way, we don't do the things he's told us to. We do things he's told us not to. All around, we just figure because we've said, Lord, Lord, we can make it all up and it's going to be okay. And it doesn't matter who's in charge. It doesn't matter whether I'm actually being obedient or not. It doesn't matter whether I'm following his lead or doing my own thing. I've said, Lord, Lord. So we're good, right? And so there's all kinds of situations. We could be here all day listening to them, right? Where we have just simply gone rogue. We've done it ourselves. We've gone our own direction. We've ignored him. We've put him off. We've made up our excuses. And they're really good excuses, by the way. And he should really listen to them, shouldn't he? Because, let's face it. I think they're great. We have all these reasons, all these rationales why we should be able to say, Lord, Lord, and do whatever we want, and it's okay. And he's being clear. As he's been teaching through this whole thing, and he's been challenging how we live, challenging our lifestyles, challenging how we see the world. And it's tempting for us to say, you can't be serious. I'll just set that one aside because that sounds crazy. Who actually befriends their enemies? Who's actually generous? Yeah, right. Who actually honors their commitments? Not in my world. I can't do that. I'm not willing to do that. Salt and light, I don't want to go make disciples. You crazy? That's scary. People might ask tough questions. So we're tempted to say, that's nice. Jesus, I'm warm and filled. Thank you for that wonderful sermon. Lord, Lord, and we walk away. And so he's saying, essentially, now what are you going to do? Now, what are we going to do? See, the stakes are high, if you notice. He's talking about when we're at the end of ourselves, when we're at the end of our lives, when we stand before him, when there's no mulligans. There's no second shot at this. We've come before him. Now, what are we going to do today so that when we get there, we're not in that moment of panic? See, there's this sort of mantra I've developed in my life that comes after this, that's based on this, that for me has been really helpful. I hope it is to you. Maybe it won't be, but I hope it is. That is just 3 simple words: abide, trust, and obey. Am I abiding in Christ? Meaning, do I know Christ? Do I know him? Does he know me? Do I go before him on a consistent basis and just sit with him? And sit with his word and just know him. Can I tell you that is way tougher than you think? Because the world clamors for our attention. Abide. As we abide, he reveals himself to us. He reveals his will. He reveals his direction. He reveals where we fit in all of this to us. And so when this is brought before us, we get to ask ourselves a question: do I trust God? Do I trust him enough that I'm willing to obey him? If he has brought me into a situation where he's saying, hey, Jeff, I need you to jump in and serve in this place. I need you to love this person. I need you to do this thing, like forgive your enemy that's totally against your will. And I know you're mad and upset and you were wronged. This is what I'm asking you to do. Or I'm asking you to be generous. I know your budget's tight, but I'm asking you to be generous in this way with this person in this situation. As I'm asking you to do this, you've abided in me, you've come to me, now, do you trust me enough to obey me? And it's easy for us to say, oh yeah, I trust God. Oh yeah, I trust God. And then the rubber meets the road. And in all of these situations that we've gone through in this sermon, when we're confronted with what goes against our instincts, which goes against our culture, what goes against our bent, and we're tempted to insert the excuses. Yeah, Jesus, I trust you, but you don't understand my schedule. You don't understand that you. And what we're really saying is, no, I don't trust you enough to obey, to listen, to actually do what you've asked me to do. And so I come back to this constantly in my life: abide, trust, and obey. Sometimes I don't even get to step one. I look around and I think, I haven't really been abiding lately. I don't even know what he's asking of me to know where to trust him, to know how to obey. Or sometimes I look around and I think, yeah, I know exactly what he's wanting me to do, but I just chose not to trust him today. See, he has gone through all of this teaching on the kingdom, and he's concluding with the requirements to enter the kingdom. What it will require if you and I want to be kingdom people. It will require that we know him and that we obey him. And that's so simple. It's so challenging, isn't it? Now, he continues here with an illustration. As Jesus usually does, these illustrations are meant to really strengthen his point. And so verse 24, he says, everyone who hears these words of mine and does them is like a wise man who built his house on a rock. The rain fell, the flood came, the winds beat against that house, but it did not collapse because it had been founded on a rock. Now notice, he's created kind of an equation here. Someone who hears these words. Now remember, he's saying this to the crowd that has been sitting there in front of him as he's preached this entire sermon, right? So they've all heard. We've had multiple weeks. You may have missed a week here or there. They were sitting there the whole time. They'd all heard these words. Hearing plus doing equals wisdom. Do you see that? Hear these words and does them is a wise man. It takes both. And then he in this illustration, he brings in this idea of a house built on rock. And the house is our lives, who we are, our character, our people, who we are as people. It's built on rock. Now, this illustration kind of loses some of its power with us because with our modern technology, we can build a house almost anywhere, right? I mean, we can put oil rigs in the middle of the ocean. We can figure out how to build a house almost anywhere, right? We can drill down pylons of concrete. We can talk to Kent. He can fix us up. We can get a house anywhere, right? And in living in this area of the country, it's not that hard for us. But where they live, there are places where this would be almost impossible. Where because of the sand, the makeup of the ground, living near a wadi or a place that is like a creek bottom that most of the year is dry, but for just a couple times a year, it would just wash your house away. And they didn't have these modern technologies. Knowing where to build a house was important if you wanted the house to be there very long. And so the question he's posing to us with this illustration is, where are you building your life? Upon what are you building your life? And by that, he means like how you're going to conduct yourself, how you're making your day-to-day decisions, how you're filtering to make your lifestyle choices, your conduct each day. Where is it? How is it that you are building it? Are you building it on wisdom or rock, meaning you're hearing God's word and you're doing it. Or, verse 26, are you this person? Anyone who hears these words of mine and does not do them is like a foolish man. You notice the exact same equation. The rain fell, the flood came, and the winds beat against that house, and it collapsed and was utterly destroyed. See, here the equation is the same, just changed. You still hear it, you just choose not to do it. And you're called a fool. By the way, someday I'm going to preach a whole series on the difference between biblical wisdom and foolishness. And the title slide is going to be a picture of Mr. T, and the title is going to be I Pity the Fool. Right? I'm just telling you, someday it's going to happen. Are we wise or are we foolish? If we are the ones who hear and then make up all our excuses and our reasons why we can't and shouldn't and won't and don't want to obey, you're a fool. And you're a fool because you've heard and you know the outcome, verses 21 through 23. You know where this is headed, and you still willingly choose it. You're a fool. But if you hear and you do, you're wise. See, in order to follow Jesus, in order to be a disciple, in order to say, I am in Jesus' kingdom, you have to follow Jesus. Right? And so to say, look, I've heard a lot about Jesus. I can fill in whatever blanks you got. That's not what he's asking. Do we believe? Do we have enough faith? Do we trust him? Do we really, really want to follow him enough to actually follow him? This is pointed, isn't it? This is hard. This whole series has been challenging. And now he very pointedly brings us to this point of decision, of saying, okay, now what? The ball is in your court. You've now heard. Would you like to follow or not? And he's not going to force us. But I want you to notice something here in this illustration he gives in verses 24 through 27. In both cases, there is a storm, right? It's not like the wise guy doesn't get the storm and the fool does. The storm comes in both cases. There will be testing of your faith. There will be times when, if today you come forward and you say, Lord, Lord, yes, I want to follow. There will be times when life is going to go, really? Because I'm going to make it really hard for you to follow. I'm going to bring this situation up, and it's going to test whether you're really going to follow or whether you're going to go your own way. And there's going to be this other situation. You can't wait for this one. It's going to be horrible, and it's going to test your faith too. Because you're going to want to run. You're going to want to do your own thing. When this situation comes up, you're going to want to take control for yourself because you think you can do it. You can't. So what are you going to do? Are you going to follow or not? And this is where he ends his sermon. I picture him like, have a great day. and they're left with this like tension of the question. And Matthew finishes with this sort of like narrative statement. When Jesus finished saying these things, the crowds were amazed by his teachings. They were amazed because he was just such a good speaker and he warmed their hearts. And it was just fuzzy wuzzy was it Jesus all over again. No, actually, that's not what it says. It says they were amazed by his teaching because he taught them like one who had authority, not like the experts in the law. Meaning of all the teaching they'd heard in their lives, of all the synagogue they'd gone to, of the rabbis they heard, of all these different teachers they'd ever heard in their lives, all of which who had authority, by the way, because of their title, They sat there with this soberness of this guy's different. This guy talks like he knows God in a different way than all these other guys do. And that would add to the weight of the moment. They're not standing up and walking out and, yay, what are we having for lunch? When somebody teaches with this kind of authority and poses this kind of question, you're left with no choice but to wrestle. You're left with no choice other than to confront the question for yourself. Am I willing to obey? Am I willing to actually live these 3 chapters? Go back and read them and ask yourself, am I really willing to? I want to close with a story. I want you to put yourself in these shoes, okay? I want you to put yourself in a first century Israeli town. A town where there's a lot happening. Okay, there's a lot of stuff happening in town. It's a going place. It's active. You got tons of friends. Just lots of things happening. You got a busy life. Life is awesome, right? Life is good. It's going. Got this appointment, that appointment, these friends, those friends. We're doing these things. We got this job. I love my job doing this, going, okay? And there's this guy in town. And he lives kind of near the edge of town, but there's this guy in town. He's just different. And everybody knows he's different, but everybody also knows that like this guy's safe. There's just something about this guy. And as he interacts with people around town, there's something different. And this guy is safe. He's a safe person. His home is a safe place. And in fact, he loves inviting people into his home. He loves inviting you in. The problem is he's so safe, he's so nice that it's almost scary. Because when he invites you in, you're safe there, but he makes you uncomfortable because he's also truthful. And he's okay confronting you with it. And so even though he's safe and he's kind of liked, he's kind of avoided because of that. And you've interacted with him numerous places around town, right? Maybe you've done different projects with him. You've heard him talk in different places. You've had different interactions with him throughout your life, but you've just never felt like going over to his house, even though he's invited you in. Well, one day in your town, all hell breaks loose. There's riots. There's upheaval. There's death in the streets. It's just chaos. Martial law, things have just gone out the window and it's just a giant mess, right? And you're running around, you're trying to figure out, what do I do? How do I get out of the chaos? How do I survive? Things are just a total mess and you're not sure what to do. You can't find a safe place because it seems like everywhere you go to retreat to, the chaos comes to you and it follows you there because it's just total chaos. And then it pops into your head. That guy's house. And even though he's right in the middle of it too, you figure his house has always been this safe place. And I've never actually gone there. I've never actually wanted to be there. But I just trust him. He's a safe guy. I'll go to his house. And so you run across town. You're taking the back alleys. You're ducking in and out of places. You get into his house and you get to his house. And the door is shut. And his door's never shut. He's the most welcoming guy. But I'll just go knock on the door because I'm sure it's shut because of the chaos. I'll just go knock on the door. And you knock on the door. And from the other side of the door, you hear, who is it? You say, it's me. Let me in. And he says, I don't know who you are. You say, don't you remember? We were together in this one place and we did this thing together. I heard. He's like, I'm sorry, I don't know who you are. I'm not going to open the door. No, we were together. Remember, you were teaching over here and I did this. Remember, I was there. I was the tall guy. And he says, I'm sorry. I don't know you. I'm not going to open the door. This is Luke 13, the parallel passage to our passage. This idea that we're going to come at the end of our lives and knock on the door and just expect that we can come in. Because after all, we said, Lord, Lord, over there, right? We did this over here. We met you here. Remember, I heard you here? The chaos in Luke 13 is described as the gnashing of teeth. It's hell. And the door for this man's house is described as the narrow door. You see the parallel? This isn't the warm, fuzzy message, is it? But it's an important one. Because this message can change your life. It can change all of our lives. It can change the trajectory of everything between today and that day. Because this isn't just about that day. I'm making sure that when you pass, when your time here is done and you go knock on that door, that he lets you in. It's not what it's about. It's about today. See, this decision of am I going to follow Jesus or not isn't just about hell fire insurance and getting out free. It's about being the kingdom of God, being what he's been talking about for 3 chapters, being this, embodying this, living this out today and tomorrow and the day after. And however many days and months and years are between you and that door. It's about now. And as we look around our world, it's easy for us to look at our world and to compare it to the Sermon on the Mount here and to see the contrast and to see the difference and for us to just shake our heads and say, what has happened to this place? That's another thing to say, okay, God, I trust you enough to be what you want us to be the kingdom here, to live different, to be generous, to forgive my enemies, to be these things. And as he said here at the very end, the ball is in your court now. What will you do? Will you follow or not? Father, so simple, yet such a challenge. Father, your grace is overwhelming. Your love for us, your pursuit of us is humbling. Father, may it cause us to pursue you back, to want to know you, to seek after you, to long for you. May your love for us want us to do nothing less than to trust you and to love you. And Father, as then you lead us in whatever directions you'd have us go, Father, give us the courage, give us the trust, give us the faith to obey. Father, the contrast between this world and what you've called us to is stark. And so we know it won't be so easy. But I pray that this is a church that knows you and follows you. That this church embodies your kingdom in such a unique way the world we live in, this neck of the woods you've given us, they couldn't ignore what you're doing through us. And so, Father, I pray for us as a church that this would be us. We would be kingdom people. And I pray for the communities you have us in, Cambridge and Oberlin and McCook and all the other communities that I know are represented by our church, that we would live lives such that those places, all of those people that we know, that we rub shoulders with, that we talk to, that we see, they would come to follow you too. There would be revival in this place. So, Father, I thank you for this challenge. I thank you for this sermon. I thank you for the vision that you have cast here on this mountainside. And I pray that your kingdom would come here as it is in heaven. So, Father, I ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.